Hello, everybody. Welcome to Science by the Glass. There we are. We're about to get started here. All right. My name is Paul Hunton. I am the General Manager of KTVZ TV Channel 5, your PBS station here in Lubbock, and I'm also the Executive Producer of the PBS digital series, Global Weirding with Dr. Catherine Hayhoe. How many of you guys have seen the series so far? Anyone see? All right. Yeah, this is our crowd right here. Fantastic. So, for those of you that don't know, Global Weirding is a series hosted and written by Dr. Catherine Hayhoe that dives into the politics, the science, the religion, and the culture around the discussion of climate change. It's a great short series. It's very short and succinct, and it gives you some great sound bites and different things, different facts that you can take with you and be armed and educated whenever it comes to climate science. So we're very excited to be a part of it, and we're very thankful to Dr. Hayhoe and her team. The show drops every other week on YouTube and Facebook. Our first episode dropped a couple weeks ago. We have about, I think, getting close to 30,000 views on Facebook, around 10,000 or so on YouTube. So it's really taking off. The next episode comes out tomorrow at 10 a.m. So be on the lookout for that. Share it, pass it around, comment on it. We really appreciate you passing along the video. That's the best way to get it out there for the most amount of people to see. And thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now. Oh, yeah, sorry, and I have these great bumper stickers. If you want a bumper sticker, raise your hand, and I will bring you one. So if your bumper sticker tied, get your hand up, I'll come around and hand those off. Yes, right behind me. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Catherine Hayhoe. Thank you. Really good.
Thank you, Paul. If you have not yet seen the Global Weirding series, you can find it at globalweirdingseries.com, or you can find it on my Facebook page, which is just my name, Catherine Hayhoe, or you can find it on the KTTZ Facebook page. The videos are super short. Every episode is about 5 minutes. And the purpose of that is so you can watch it on your phone when you're standing in line at the bank or waiting in the parking lot to pick up somebody. And then you can quickly share it with somebody to hopefully start a conversation. That's the point of these videos. Let me move this over here. So I want to welcome everybody here. We've been doing Science by the Glass now for 1.5 years. And we are here together as well as with our live stream audience. So all of these events are recorded and they're available on the Planet Science Center's YouTube page if you want to find them later. Tonight we're addressing probably the hottest topic that we've had yet, yes, pun intended, very much. And that is the issue of climate change in the election that is coming up in a matter of weeks. I want to start with a brief overview of where we are today, and then I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed panel to talk about the issue. So, if you look at where we were 22 years ago, I won't ask for a show of hands. I imagine most people in this room were alive 22 years ago, most people. This is what the political landscape looked like. Democrats and Republicans were pretty close together. But over time, in 2011, go ahead, there we go, over time, and then again, now in 2015 is the latest data, we have seen people move further and further apart. The United States is far more polarized now politically than it was just 20 years ago. When we ask people, and this is a very interesting graph that we're going to refer back to in our panel discussion. When we ask people, do you agree with your party's political position on, and I know this is very small, so I'm going to read you these words in order. Do you agree with your political party, and the red is Republican, the blue is Democrat, on ISIS, that's the top one, on gun policy, on illegal immigration, the economy, the budget deficit, healthcare, the rich-poor gap, abortion, and climate change. Climate change is fascinating because it is the topic on which most Republicans, the greatest number of Republicans, 41% of Republicans, disagree with their party's position. So this is a really interesting topic, and the purpose of this panel here is to dig into that issue a little bit further. Now, usually if you hear people talking about climate change, it looks something like this. Susie, the scientist, brings in all her scientific reports to show why the planet is warming and humans are responsible, and Calvin responds with his identity, with who he is, and saying that this can't be true because of who he is. Such conversation does not build bridges, it digs trenches, and it usually ends with something like this. I couldn't find a picture where both the heads actually exploded, but that's usually what happens. Just to set the stage, you know me, I'm a scientist. We're going to have 1 minute of science here. We know that burning coal, gas, and oil produces carbon dioxide, which is a heat-trapping gas. It produces the same amount of carbon dioxide whether that coal or gas or oil is burned by a Democrat or a Republican, or by a Libertarian or a member of the Green Party. It does not matter. We know how much of this stuff we've been burning since the 1800s because we've kept good records. The answer is a ton of it. And these heat-trapping gases are wrapping an extra blanket around our planet that is keeping our planet warmer than it would be otherwise. That is how we know that not only is our global temperature going up, as you can see by the blue and red bars, but it's going up because of these heat-trapping gases. That's the black line. How do we know the planet is warming? It's not just thermometers, it's not just satellites, it's not just scientific instruments. If we look around the world, there are 26,500 natural thermometers. The fire ants we have here that we didn't used to because it was too cold. The glaciers that are melting. The birds and the insects and the animals that are moving towards the North Pole because it's getting warmer. Our planet is telling us there is something happening. And we've known about it for a long time. These are the original scientists who discovered the fact that humans burning fossil fuels produces climate change. We have known the connection between our energy choices and a changing climate for over 150 years. This is not new science. Last year, I participated in the anniversary of the first time that US scientists officially warned a US president of the dangers of climate change. It was the 50th anniversary, and that president was Lyndon B. Johnson. That's how long this has been around. We know, too, that in recent days, the support is not just coming from scientists. The support is coming from the Pope, the National Association of Evangelicals, who published a wonderful report by Loving the Least of These. The support is coming from all across the spectrum, all kinds of people. Yet, on Monday, this is just from this Monday, the Pew Foundation published a new report on climate change in the election. I should have sent them a thank you note. I mean, this was literally yesterday, and our forum was today. So I got these two figures from this report that just came out yesterday. This is figure number 1. This is asking people, do you think climate change is mostly human, that's the orange, mostly natural, that's the green, or not happening at all, that is the gray? There is a huge difference between people's answers depending on who they are planning to vote for in a matter of a few weeks. But then, next slide. Oh, sorry about that. I forgot I had this one in here. Go ahead. This is a quote from one of my favorite guys. He's with the National Association of Evangelicals, former missionary, now does government relationships for evangelicals. And here's what this man had to say. I think he's 100% on the money on this one. He said, many evangelicals oppose action to slow climate change not on a religious basis, but politically because they believe the government wants to take away their freedom. Now we're getting to the root of the issue. And this is the second figure from the Pew Foundation. This is looking at the difference between people who will be voting for Trump versus people voting for Clinton. On the science, that's number 1. So the first bar there is the science, and that is the biggest bar. So people are most divided on the science of climate change. What are all those other bars? Those other bars are solutions. Guess what? We're not as divided on the solutions as we are on the issue. And personally, as a climate scientist, I am totally fine with that. If we fix this problem, you say I'm fixing it for a different reason, I don't care, it's fixed. Right? So that's where I want to go with this panel. Now, just to lead us into the panel, I want to give you the statements that each of our four official candidates, President, I want to give you the statements that they made on the sciencedebate.org. So if you go to sciencedebate.org, there are 20 science questions that each candidate responded to formally. And I'm going to show you the answers to question number 3, which is this one right here. What are your views on climate change and how would your administration act on those views? Here we go. Up first is Gary, libertarians. We accept climate change is occurring and human activity is contributing to it. Unfortunately, the very activities that appear to contribute to it also contribute to our health and prosperity. So we view with a skeptical eye any attempt to curtail economic activity, and it is not certain that unilateral regulatory approaches by the US will in fact produce benefits that are proportionate to costs. You can tell when a politician's campaign has written something because there's lots of 5-syllable words. Then we have Donald. He says, there is much that still needs to be investigated in the field of climate change. Perhaps the best use of our limited financial resources should be in dealing with making sure every person has clean water. Maybe we should focus on eliminating diseases around the world like malaria. Perhaps we should focus on developing energy sources and power production that alleviates the need for dependence on fossil fuels. We must decide how best to proceed so we can make lives better, safer, and more prosperous. Hillary. When it comes to climate change, the science is crystal clear. Climate change is an urgent threat and a defining challenge of our time, and its impacts are already being felt at home and around the world. That's why, as president, I will work both domestically and internationally to ensure we build on recent progress and continue to slash greenhouse gas pollution over coming years, as science clearly tells us. And lastly, we have Jill, who says climate change is the greatest existential threat humanity has ever faced. We will enact an emergency new Green Deal to turn the tide on climate change, revive the economy, and make wars for oil obsolete, create 20 million jobs, transition to 100% clean renewable energy, and invest in public transit, sustainable agriculture, conservation, and restoration of critical infrastructure and ecosystems. These are the 4 candidates. Up on our stage here, we now have 4 panelists.
I'm Dan Epstein. I worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign, though truthfully,
I'm Brian Schreck, and I'm voting for Hillary.
And I am Canadian, so I officially vote for the Canada for President party. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's very funny on YouTube. Justin Trudeau, yes, we have a Prime Minister called Justin Trudeau, but if I were American, and if I could make anybody president right now, I would actually probably vote for Lindsey Graham because I think that he has solutions to climate change from a modern perspective. And that's, I think, what is needed to bring people together. So you have a pretty diverse panel here. Here is our first question. We are going to let whoever wants to answer this right. We pass it around. Let's probably two of you to answer each question. We have seen government do everything from, in the Carolinas, the government literally voted on whether sea level is rising or not. I don't know how well that turned out. To ignoring climate change completely. In your opinion, what is the role of government when it comes to climate change? Who wants to take this first? Not all of us.
I really think that the government's role is to try and address the problems of society, and especially to coordinate solutions to problems that people on their own, making just their individual atomized behavior, like may take advantage of this free rider problem, or hope that someone else will solve it, or I'll do what's best for me, and other people can just feel like. And so I think the government ought to play a really important coordinating role in looking out for what is best for all of us, when what is best for each individual one of us, and especially in short term or in our own lifetimes, might not actually be what's best for all of us if everyone behaves that way, simply acting on their own individual interests. And I think that government should not only coordinate, but should undertake a constraining role against behavior that is destructive to others.
One of the clear distinctions between a Republican and a Democrat is the idea that, and it's been articulated in the political science literature, is the idea that what does a good society look like and what roles does government play in it? And the distinction between a Democrat and a Republican is, at its most base, is the idea that Democrats believe that the role of government is robust. In opposition to that, you have the Republican Party who says, well, the role of government should be lessened, and they rely a great deal on the free market, but the principles of the free market. So, at the end of the day, when you're talking about response from the government and what role do they play, and you've got candidates in front of you, the distinction really boils down to what role does the government play? From a Democratic point of view, a role of government is going to be incredibly important. Whereas a Republican point of view or a conservative point of view, so the free market is going to be far more important. And really that's where the distinction lays. And so addressing climate change, you hear these distinctions in the campaign.
Okay, go ahead.
So even though I'm in the political science department, my research focuses on it's grounded in public administration, and so I'm really concerned with how, for example, nonprofits actually work to revitalize urban neighborhoods. And so even though government has made some improvement under the Obama administration, how they have addressed climate change, I'm a key proponent that government really should look to local cooperatives as a way to address climate change. When I say that, because there's a lot of research that suggests that nonprofits, for example, are very instrumental in addressing issues, whether related to climate change or environmental injustice. And so I really think that government really should partner with the third sector in terms of actually addressing some of these issues. As we know, a lot of times government has been very ineffective in addressing a lot of these issues. But nonprofits have really taken a leading role in addressing issues related to the environment, specifically environmental injustices in urban neighborhoods. And so I think it would be a good idea if we took kind of a collaborative management standpoint and worked with nonprofits and other institutions to address these issues. So really, I believe that program really should get the the states. The states can decide which nonprofits or other institutions can help mitigate the effects of climate change.
Thank you. Now, this past week, I'm actually not ashamed to say that I read an excellent article in Cosmopolitan magazine. The people who aren't laughing don't know what that is, clearly. It was not what you think it was. It was an article on why young people should vote. And the author of the article, who is the screenwriter for My Crazy Ex-Boyfriend, if anybody's ever seen that show, she said that she thought, originally it would be something related to women's rights or something related to lifestyle choices, but the more people she asked, the more she realized the number one issue that for young people to vote in this election was climate change. And so there was this amazing article in Cosmo, you can find it online if you want to read it, that was fantastic about the science and about the personal implications of climate change. So my question to you all is this: if this article in Cosmo magazine, as in many other magazines, says that climate change is so important, why were there no questions about it in the debate? Brian.
I guess to get a definitive answer on that, you have to ask the debate moderators. I can only speculate on that. I think one reason for that is just the nature of this particular campaign cycle. It has been dominated by sort of sensationalistic politics and politics and personal attack and that sort of thing. And so that has really sort of dominated the debate and the public discourse surrounding this campaign. Another reason I think for that is that young people make up too small a portion of the electorate because they don't vote in the same numbers that middle-aged and older people vote. And so if we want to change that, then young people need to vote.
Good answer. Anybody else? That's it.
I know you want to.
Go ahead and say it.
I know you do.
So I just turned in a big stack of voter registration applications. Today was the deadline. So if you haven't registered to vote here, it's too late. Today was the deadline. Of a bunch of students at Texas Tech. And students, I think, they have a desire, young people have a desire to participate, and certainly working in the Bernie campaign. I mean, I'm not as young as I look. I guess I hope not.
None of us are.
No, I saw this. There's a huge outpouring of energy, but oftentimes for young people, it doesn't come through the traditional modes of participation, like voting, unfortunately, because that's still what defines power in our system. But often it doesn't come through watching debates. And I mean, I think in general also, most people, and as we saw from the positions up there, only 2 of those candidates were allowed to be in the debate for reasons that we're not going to. I think people thought everybody knows where they stand, and it wouldn't have limited anything new, because especially in this election, I think more than past elections, and I think much more than future elections, it's pretty stark, the difference between the Democrat and the Republican candidate. I don't think it's going to be that way forever, even though we saw that widening divide in conservative and liberal. That was for overall views, that wasn't for climate views. And I think we see that there are big changes coming, certainly in the Republican Party in terms of what it will be about in the future, and the Democratic Party too. And I think we're going to be coming around to the point where in the future it will be important to ask the candidates, because they might not have such a distinctive difference as is clear now already in this campaign. So we didn't need any more information.
Good point. I'm convinced. All right. Next question on that one.
Those were 2 great answers, I'm convinced. All right, now here's my favorite question. If you could ask presidential candidates, all 4 of them, not just 2, if you could ask them one question about climate change, what would it be?
Go for it.
Yeah, I know, right? I want to understand how the president uses the political pulpit. There's plenty of literature out there that basically says that presidents convince the public at large. I mean, we all understand how politics works. We all understand that senators are basically, there's two of them who represent our states. We all understand the representative represents their district, but the president represents the whole. And the idea has germinated over time where you look at the president and their ability to convince the public. And so you go back to Teddy Roosevelt, my favorite president, who basically says, the attribute is the golden pulpit. How do you convince, as a president, the public, how do you persuade them to advocate to the Congress, because that's where the laws are made. And that's where decisions are made that then become implemented over time through the various agencies. And Obama tried it, he failed in his first term. But how do you convince the public to advocate to the Congress? And how do you get them on board to shift subsidies, tax loopholes, tax breaks, et cetera, that have been used for decades to create markets for fossil fuel development in order to institute a different infrastructure and a different economy that is based on renewables and alternatives? The market is there. The idea that government assists those markets in a sense of being created is historical. We know that this happens, but yet most Americans, quite frankly, don't understand this is actually the way in which our country developed economically from a historical and political perspective. So my question would be, how do you convince them to advocate to Congress to shift away from fossil fuels and towards renewable in terms of economic infrastructure?
That's a good question. What would you ask?
Okay, so I would take a different route, and so I'm glad I'm on this panel because I think I bring a different perspective. And so, if you don't already know, climate change affects people differently. By people, it's different across race. And so my question would essentially be, how do you plan to deal with environmental pollution in low-income urban areas? That's what's important to me, and what all my research focuses on. So I did some research on this, and just wanted to share some quick facts. And one is that African American children are 10 times more likely to die from asthma compared to their white counterparts. Also, African Americans contribute much less to the problem of climate change than others, and in fact, African American households emit 20% less greenhouse gases compared to Caucasians. And so essentially my question would be is, how do you begin to address these issues that are impacting urban neighborhoods? We look at what's going on in Chicago, for example. Chicago has a lot of plants that are located in urban neighborhoods and emit dangerous gases that impact African Americans and other minorities on a daily basis. And so African Americans tend to have high rates of cancer because of this. And so climate change affects African Americans at a disproportionate level compared to Caucasians. So my question to the candidates again would be, how do we go about addressing these environmental justice issues? Because they're having a negative impact. We look at even recently in Michigan and how African American neighborhoods were exposed to lead in the water. And so again, issues related to social justice is something that I think should be at the forefront of this debate on climate change.
So I think first, I would ask, the question I would ask Donald Trump, because he has explicitly said that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. And if you look at the official GOP party platform this year, it explicitly accuses climate scientists of manipulating the data for partisan purposes. The question I would ask him is, what if you're wrong? And specifically, what will you tell your grandchildren if you're wrong? And the question I would ask Hillary Clinton is, she is likely to have a Republican House of Representatives. She may have a narrow Democratic majority in the Senate, but they'll probably lose that in the 2018 midterms. So my question is, how will she implement her agenda to do something about climate change in divided government?
Good question.
Well, I was thinking about grandchildren too, which is ironic.
I got it.
No, I was thinking I would ask each candidate, you know, if you think about the things that are really the issues of the day in terms of economic benefits, in terms of economic advantages and disadvantages, you know, what we're fighting about today. And particularly even, you know, for each candidate, what your own constituents, supporters, maybe well-heeled donors in some places, you think of what's important to them. And then you put that on a scale against, you know, for me, I think of my grandchildren, but I would say, you know, great-grandchildren, you know, long after all of those Wall Street donors are dead and gone, long after all of the, you know, offsetting tax years of the net operating loss have elapsed, you know, long in the future, what things in the future are worth fighting for? And would you try and convince even people on your side, you know what, we have to sacrifice something of what we feel is really important today for, you know, for next quarter's quarterly report for our corporation, or for what our organization can send out in our annual newsletter for fundraising, what that today maybe seems really important could be sacrificed, and how then, to what you were saying as well, how do you take that need to sacrifice today to the people who are up in elections that don't even have a competitor running against them? I mean, here in Lubbock, except for the presidential race, there isn't a single other race there's actually two major party candidates running for. You know, and how do we take that to people who don't even have to face opponents, except maybe within their own party who are more extreme, and say, you know what, let's think about the future, not just what people are clamoring for today. What would you do? What would you say to convince people, not just today, but way down the line?
And that really strikes to the heart of the issue, which is when people are elected, they're elected for 4 to 6 years, right? And so their entire focus after you get elected is what's going to get me reelected. And a long-term focus is not necessarily what is going to get you reelected, sadly. All right. So let's turn to talking about the solutions now, because as we saw from the introduction, climate science is one of the biggest areas of disagreement between the two parties' positions. But at the same time, climate solutions are one of the biggest places where people might agree. So what on earth is going on? There is this cool organization called Citizens Climate Lobby that I support as their national science advisor. We have a little chapter right here in Lubbock. And what I love about Citizens Climate Lobby is they have, this is real, this is not a fantasy, they have built a bipartisan climate solutions caucus. It has currently 20 members, 10 elected Republican congressmen and women, and 10 elected Democrats. It was originally started, the founding members were a Democrat and a Republican from Florida, who have seen the flooding impacts already in their cities, to, quote, explore the policy options that address the impacts, causes, and challenges of our changing climate. I love this because it's a perfect example of people working together who come from very different places. So here's my next question to the panel here. And after this next question to the panel, we will take a couple of audience questions. We want everybody to be able to hear them though. So if you have a question while the panel is answering, if you don't mind, I know it's a little crowded in here, if you don't mind making your way over to the side here, we will offer you the microphone so everybody can hear your question. So if you have a question for the panel over the next few minutes, make your way over here. But in the meantime, let me ask you, how do we get past the partisan divide that we're stuck in and move on to solutions that have bipartisan support?
All right. It's a wonderful book. It was written by Cass Susty. It's called Nudge. And the idea is that you find a balance between incentive, whether it be those of us who study administrative law and those of us who study rules and regulations, we refer to as basically the stick and the carrot. And so you need to find the stick and the carrot.
Oh, the carrot.
So you offer a carrot in terms of an incentive. You're going to do good. We'll reward you for doing good. Or you do a stick in the sense of we're going to punish you for doing bad. And find the balance between the carrot and the stick is an art in and of itself in politics. So when you talk about carbon, the idea, and this is why it resonates so well with carbon in terms of the fee, the carrot is that you're going to get tax breaks, that you're going to get, monetary incentive for, producing a product that is, depending less on carbon than you would normally expect in terms of a traditional manufacturing process. On the flip side of that, the stick is that if you produce more, well, then you're getting punished, which means you're going to pay a tax or a penalty or a fee, whatever it might be. So the idea is to find a balance. And based on my own experience with Utah State Legislature, where there are huge pollution problems in the valley, the idea was to, in a sense, put a fee on the tailpipe. And it's a crazy formula, but at the end of the day, what it boiled right down to is that based on this formula, if you drove over certain miles that were on the average that your car, your automobile was expected to drive, you would, at the time of your inspection, you would pay a fee. And this would apply to private as well as fleet vehicles. On the other hand, if you went on the other side and went underneath those miles that you were expected to drive through, then you would receive a tax break. So the idea is to balance that stick and that carrot. And it is a tricky, tricky thing to do once legislation is passed with an objective that is basically delegated to these agencies that say achieve the objective without, quite frankly, upsetting everybody.
Okay. Yeah, well, to get past it, now, there's one sort of short answer, and I think that sort of just holds our breaths and wait. I think after this election, it comes up that, unless there's, some kind of miracle from above, we're going to have not only a Democratic president, we're going to have a Republican Party that has to really seriously think, what's the new Republican Party going to be like? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to be a good idea for it to be like the guy who is at the apex of the Republican Party now. I think most Republicans will probably agree with that, certainly after November 8th. So the short answer is hold our breath. But, I think the long answer, and I was at a talk about 4 years ago, the institution where I used to teach, where the guy who was the head of the Council of Economic Advisors for George W. Bush, one of the very conservative economists working today, he had to talk to a bunch of students, and there was a dinner afterwards, and we were kind of debating a bunch of things at the dinner, and, we kind of came around one conversation, and he said, I think what we really need to all focus on as Democrats and Republicans is climate change. This is the huge problem that is going to confront our future. Now, he didn't say that in public, and he's not an elected official, he was an appointee, but I think one of the big problems is, we saw that, 59% of Republicans seem to agree with their party, but there are so many people, I think, on both sides who maybe agree with their party, not so much because they really are that committed to not doing anything about the climate, but because this gets conflated with other kinds of things. And I think the more the time goes on, the more that we see people who are interested in property rights over land, people who are interested in poverty in other countries. People, especially a lot of people, I think Christians, maybe evangelical, Catholic, mainline Protestant or other, who think of the earth as something that we should be a steward of. You know, there's going to be a lot more agreement, and one of the big things holding us back is that someone who's actually an elected politician is going to have very difficult times actually saying this because they are so dependent on the money that comes from a really small number of individuals, many of whose livelihoods and huge fortunes are directly connected to businesses that would take a hit if we did something about climate change. I think really reforming our political system so that politicians, even elected politicians, can listen to their own constituents instead of being required the amounts of money that are needed to win re-election, to listen to a tiny number of people who basically have interests that are opposed to those of many of their own constituents, be they black or white. But I think if we change that, that would be a huge way to really free even our politicians to do what they might want in their hearts to do, but for the sake of their pocketbooks, they can't bring themselves to.
Yeah, go for it. You guys are being too polite. Yeah.
I agree with everything that Daniel just said, and I think one of the ways that we get there is through education. And I think getting into schools and teaching people about climate change, things like what you're doing with the Global Weirding series, which really breaks things down for people in a way that they can understand the science. And so I think education is the key towards sort of building that electoral coalition where a majority of voters actually accept the science and accept that we need to do something about climate change. And when that happens, then I think the elected officials will follow.
I actually agree with my colleagues, Brian and Daniel, and I think one of the issues is that climate change means different things to different people. And so, for example, I think it's really important that we kind of rephrase or repackage what we mean by climate change. I mean, so for evangelicals, for example, I think a lot of times, because of their religious beliefs, they tend to be anti-climate change because it kind of goes against their religious principles. And in some of their science, it's kind of like, oh no, But what's cool about what Dr. Hager was doing is by repackaging it by, we are going to be stewards, kind of what God has kind of given us. Even African Americans, they tend to be climate deniers because they tend to have very strong religious beliefs. But I think when you repackage it, I think that helps a lot in terms of people actually believing that it's actually a problem. In terms of our elected officials, until we get rid of the Koch brothers and other private interest groups who provide millions of dollars to campaigns and to interest groups, I don't see this problem going away anytime soon. And as long as there's money to be made by the fuel industry, they're going to do whatever they can to stop. But I think what we fail to realize as individuals is that we do have the power to change, and whether we believe in Barack Obama's political agenda or his platform, he really was very skilled in kind of mobilizing individuals. And even when you think about Donald Trump, he may not be our favorite candidate, but he's been very good about mobilizing his constituency. And until we have a candidate that can mobilize his or her constituency, I think it's going to be really difficult for us to address issues related to climate change, especially when we have so many private interests who are giving so much money to climate denier groups.
Yeah, that's good. Very briefly.
Very briefly, because I agree with everything you guys have said. In the idea that you control the policy-making environment, one of the best things that had ever happened to our country, I swear to you, is this idea that you would, in essence, reform campaign financing and, honest to God, repeal Citizens United.
Yeah.
I just
So yesterday I was speaking with a senator whose last name is Whitehouse, very appropriately from Rhode Island, And someone asked him if you could do one thing, what would you do? And he did say repeal Citizens United. If, just to back up what Nate is saying there, and now you see where we're going, we're all kind of in agreement here. Just to back up what Nate was saying, there are powerful industries, not all fossil fuels, basically industries who don't want the government putting regulations on how they can pollute the water or the air, who give large amounts of money to organizations. And what those organizations do with that money is they harass and prosecute people like me. I know that because it's actually happened to me personally. Koch brother funded organizations have gone after me. Fortunately, Texas Tech has stood by me, and I definitely appreciate that. But they have gone out of their way, yeah. But there are, make no mistake, real people who will go out of their way to try to shut up anybody who stands up in the public sphere and says, climate is changing. Humans, for the first time in the history of this planet, are responsible and the impacts are serious. So do we have any questions who have made their way up here? We have 2 questions. Come up here. We need you in the microphone here. I'm sorry. We just need people to hear. We have 2 questions. And here is our first question. We will ask one person in the panel to respond to each question.
Okay, you guys have addressed to the audience the power of the vote. Could you tell me a little bit about your opinions about the power of purchase? How can we as consumers influence the effects of the question?
So power of purchase. Who wants to take that? That's a good one. You do it? Okay.
All right, the power of purchase. The idea is that this kind of goes back to carbon peak. And the idea that if there's carbon that is being produced by the manufacturing process, that you're going to pay a larger amount. It's distributed. The idea, and this is the conflict in many ways, that the idea is the cost is distributed. So in terms of purchasing power, investigate those companies that are producing, manufacturing certain products. Patagonia is an ideal situation where, and I'm not going to argue that you wear the badge of Patagonia on your chest, but the idea is that you can turn the clothing once it's torn and done. They will actually recycle it and then produce another product based on the product that they sold you originally, and they'll give you a discount and a rebate. So that's what I mean by solutions, right? This idea of closing the cycle in terms of that carbon footprint. So yes, but honestly, it takes you to investigate what you're purchasing.
Yes, good answer. So this is a perfect lead-in. You may be wondering, well, how can I, as a person living in Lubbock, Texas, make choices? This Sunday, yes, this Sunday, in 5 days, at the Texas Tech Museum, from 2 to 4 p.m., they have a Green Revolution exhibit in our Climate Science Center with many of those you see here. We are hosting over 15 community organizations that help us make good choices. There will be organizations that say, if you're going to buy your light bulbs at Walmart, here's the LEDs that work. There'll be organizations that say, if you want to do something with your garden, here's how you can reduce your water use. Or if you want to cut your water use in your house, here's how you do it. So if you want to know what we can do living in Lubbock, Texas, come to the museum at 2 o'clock on Sunday. If you want more info, it's on our Facebook page and the museum's Facebook page. 2 o'clock on Sunday, and we're going to be walking you through these 15 plus different organizations. Then they're all going to have tables there, and you can hang out with them and ask them questions. So come to the museum this Sunday. All right, second question.
All right, so far, all of the political discussions have been about the United States, and I was wondering if the rest of the world, the other countries of the world, are going through the same political battle for climate change that we're going through here. Is the rest of the world still divided, or is the United States kind of unique in that aspect?
Good question. I'm going to give 2 seconds and then pass it to one of these guys here. The United States is the only country in the entire world that has a major political party that says that climate is not changing due to human activities. I went to Paris this year for the Paris Agreement. There were 195 countries there, and the United States was the only one. where politicians think they know more about science than scientists do. Hopefully we can change that, and hopefully you've seen how with our panel we're talking about how that is changing. And with the stats we showed earlier, that is already changing. There should be plenty of room for argument among politicians about how to fix this. If you have 2 politicians in a room, you probably couldn't get them to agree on how to fix it. And that's the way it should be, that's politics. But the science is the science. And as I said today in the New York Times, gravity is gravity. It doesn't care if you believe in it. If you step off the cliff, you're going down. So, what is unique about the US and how is that both a strength or a weakness? Who wants to take that? Need
Okay, you take it. I'm stuck.
Okay, so I'll be honest and admit that I used to be a climate denier until I got my PhD. So I was like, oh, climate change is like, you know, scam. But I don't believe that anymore. And the amazing thing is, when I started doing more research on issues related to sustainability, I found that so many countries were like so way ahead of kind of what we're doing here in the United States. And a lot of them use cooperatives and work locally with communities to address issues related to climate change. And so this really is something that's unique to the United States. And I was in Europe this summer with my wife, and I just couldn't believe how environmentally friendly the rest of the world is outside of the United States. So it's a huge issue here, and I think more so because there's so many private interests tied to coal and tied to oil. And I think that's probably, I think capitalism is probably what's so unique to the United States compared to other countries. And because we're so vested in our fuel industry, it's really hard for us to kind of step away from that. And until we embrace other alternative fuels, I don't really see us changing anytime soon. I hate being pessimistic, but.
Well, that's okay. So,
just a second, I'll give you some. So that's the perfect lead into our last question. For our last question, I'm going to ask each one of you to tell me extremely briefly, and you can have what you're going to say about the US too. Tell me in one sentence, what gives you hope when it comes to climate? I'm going to go first to give you a second to think about it. And then we'll start with Brian, because Robert looks like he needs the most time to think about it. Okay, what gives me hope when it comes to climate change? My answer may surprise you, because what gives me hope is Texas. We already get 10% of our energy from wind. On a windy night, we get over 50% from wind. In San Antonio, they are training oil patch workers who lost their jobs when oil prices plummeted to install solar panels instead. Yeah. Fort Hood, I'm good at putting a lot of commas in the sentence. Fort Hood went wind and solar on their new electricity contract because that would save taxpayers $165 million. Yeah, that's the Department of Defense there. And the little town of Georgetown is going 100% renewable next year, on record as saying they're not doing it because they're a bunch of tree huggers, they're doing it because they're saving money. So that is what gives me hope. All right, in one sentence, Brian, here you go. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is young people. Like on a number of issues, public opinion among younger people on climate change is a lot different from what it is among older people. So, when people who are 18 to 29 today reach the age when they actually start voting, 35.
Oh gosh.
Maybe we can actually get something done.
Good answer.
So I'll say first that half of what I was going to say, Nate was talking about these wonderful European countries, but I spend most of my time for the United States studying other parts of the world, mostly poor countries, often non-democratic countries, and most of these countries are really terrible about addressing climate change. Russia, China, most of the world, unstable democracies and dictatorships. These are the countries that stand against doing something important on climate change, and they may say they do at these conferences, but they don't follow through. But what gives me hope is the country of Brazil. This is another place where I spent a lot of time. This is a country that had a long dictatorship, but unlike some of these other countries in the world, emerged from that dictatorship with an imperfect democracy, but people valued the important things about building society for the future. It's proven it can remove corrupt presidents, even if the economy is still going into the toilet, and where people on both sides of the political spectrum see the importance for the future and for people's lives today, especially people across racial and economic diversity, of having a clean environment and a society that confronts climate change, even in the worst of economic times. People stand against it. And I feel that that's really hopeful for other countries in the world and for our own country. We value democracy, we value the future.
Good answer, nice.
What gives me hope is kind of what Brian mentioned is really millennials. Millennials outnumber baby boomers. And so, and so what gives me hope is the fact that young people are so engaged on the issues related to climate change and other social issues. And I think in the next 10, 20 years, I think we'll see a lot of change when, and especially in the development. So again, millennials are going to be hope that this issue will be in the forefront.
I'm going to make a couple of points real quick. One is that the idea is that generational change, I agree with you guys. Generational change is great. I'll also say that in some regards, we're going through an historical shift, as we always have, with regard to energy resources. And energy and climate are absolutely intertwined with one another. So if you look at wood, if you look at coal, if you look at natural gas, oil, natural gas, and so on and so forth, they're absolutely intertwined. And I think we are in absolutely, unequivocally, a historical shift with regard to our energy resources. And the last point I'm going to make, and this is on a personal note, scientists and policy people, policy scientists, policy analysts, have to be able to communicate with each other in ways that make a difference. And I've been here for 5 years, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate my working relationship with Catherine in that regard. Because I'm an energy policy expert, she's a climate expert. And we have bounced ideas off each other for these past 5 years. And I can't tell you how productive that's been. Thanks.
Thank you.
Robert's point is perfect because I remind you again about the Green Revolution exhibit at the museum. We're talking about this. I know we didn't plan any.
I know.
Yeah. Sunday at 2 p.m. You can tour the exhibits, talk about the Green Revolution that's already underway, and you can figure out how to connect with people here in Lubbock who can help us make that happen. Thank you for coming. Don't forget globalweirdingseries.com. New video coming out tomorrow. And we'll see you here next time.